I'm Kelly Wilson. This is the Cooking with Plants series presented by Trinity Health Ann Arbor Lifestyle Medicine team. Tonight, we are going to be talking about meal prep. But before we get started, I wanted to go through a couple housekeeping things. If you haven't been with us before and you would like to turn on closed captions so that you see text populate as I'm speaking throughout class tonight, you can go up to the three dots at the top of your screen that say more, open up a drop-down menu, and then you would select language. And then turn on live captions, and then you should see some text automatically populate for you. Um, if you are interested in asking questions tonight, I want you to ask questions. You're automatically muted and your cameras are off just because we are recording these classes, and we want to make sure that the recording is clean and there's no interruptions, but that doesn't mean I don't want you to ask questions and interact with us. So you can do that by going to the Q&A function, which is at the very top of your toolbar in Microsoft Teams, and it's two little like word bubbles kind of overlapping each other. Type your question in that, and then at the end of class, we'll go through and see if there's any questions that came up and make sure that we address them. If we don't get to your question, please feel free to email us at lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org, and we can answer your question there. I should say too with this, if you're on your phone or your iPad joining us, you won't have access to that feature. So I apologize for that. If your question does not get answered, please email us at lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org, and we'll make sure your questions get answered. So for those of you who haven't been with us before, I'm Kelly Wilson. I'm a registered dietitian and certified lifestyle medicine practitioner here at Trinity Health Ann Arbor in our lifestyle medicine department. We have a whole team of registered dietitians and physicians who work here, kind of taking the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, which are a whole food, plant-forward dietary pattern. It's obviously what we're talking about in class tonight, but those pillars also include regular physical activity, social connection, managing our stress, restorative sleep, and avoiding risky substances. So we use all of those 6 pillars in our classes and our one-on-one patient appointments to help folks treat, prevent, and reverse chronic illness. I'm really thrilled to be able to teach these classes. I love teaching these culinary classes because I'm a firm believer that anybody can cook. And my hope is that if you feel a little intimidated in your kitchen, that by the end of tonight's class or after a few classes, you'll feel more comfortable trying new things and kind of stretching outside of your comfort zone. Cooking is a muscle just like any other. It takes practice and time, and I promise the more you practice, the better you will get, and the better you'll get at trusting your own instincts in the kitchen. Just start small wherever you are and build from there, and remember that any change that we're making, whether it's adding more plants to our plate or adding more steps throughout our day, takes time, and change is not a linear process. It kind of looks a little bit like a roller coaster, and the most important thing is that you just keep pointing yourself back in the right direction, okay? And reminding yourself that it takes about 66 days to form a new habit. So if this is new for you, just keep on keeping on. Persistence is key. I also want to remind you that any of the recipes that I share with you, just like any recipe, is a suggestion. So if there are ingredients that you don't love or you don't have at home, feel welcome to swap for things that you do have on hand or that you do enjoy. I'll talk through some of those substitutions as we cook, but feel free to ask your neighbor and again, use your own intuition. Tonight, like I said, we're talking about batch cooking and meal prep. If you haven't been with us, these are some of the other classes that we've covered. You can go back to the class website, which I will share a QR code for at the end of class. You can go to that class website, watch any of the recordings. These are also on our YouTube and our Vimeo page as well. And then if you haven't signed up through our online form for the class series, that's also on the website. And if you do that, you'll get the links for the upcoming classes throughout the rest of the year. You can watch these classes as a one-off. You don't have to participate in the whole series, but the whole series does kind of build off of each other. The information that we share in these classes is general information. So if you have a specific health condition that you're trying to manage, some of the information I share may or may not apply to you, or you might need a more intensive approach. For example, I use a lot of olive oil for sauteing. If you have a history of heart disease and you need to lower your fat intake, that might be something that you swap water and do a water saute instead. And I'll talk about those things as we go through class. If you've been newly diagnosed with a medical condition and you haven't spoken to your physician and your registered dietitian for specific dietary advice, make sure you do that before making any drastic changes. Most people can benefit from adding more plants to their plate, which is what we focus on in tonight's class, but it's still always a good idea to check in with your registered dietitian and your physician before making big changes. And if you need help connecting to a physician or a dietitian, please feel welcome to email us at the email on the screen, and we'd be happy to help get you connected. So tonight's class, like I said, we're going to talk briefly about some meal prep strategies and then go through demos of a handful of recipes that are really good for meal prepping or batch cooking. And then I would love for you to hang with me. I've got a QR code to a survey. We're halfway through the year, and I really value your perspective on these classes. And I want to make sure that I'm capturing that so that these classes are working as best as they can for you and meeting your needs. So we'll do that at the end of class today. So let's get started. Meal prep, I think, is something a lot of folks think about. It's not something by any means that you have to do to be healthy or get a lot of plant foods on your plate. It is simply a strategy that can help make eating these plant-based foods a little bit easier. And it can look a lot of different ways. And there's no one wrong or right way to do it. And we'll talk through some of those. The most important thing is that you're just picking a strategy that works for you. So why would we even think about meal prepping in the first place? First and foremost, it does help save time. So it can cut down on that, like, oh crap, what are we going to make for dinner? And the hemming and hawing and the trying to figure out what's in your fridge and not quite knowing and looking up recipes. Meal prepping is planning ahead. And so you don't get stuck in that, or you're less likely to get stuck in that what's for dinner mode. It can also help you save money, because if you're planning ahead and you're prepping some of your ingredients or cooking certain recipes, you're less likely to waste food. So that cilantro or that bag of broccoli is less likely to get slimy in the back of your fridge because you're using it in your recipe. And then it can help decrease stress. Like I said, you're not in that, oh crap, what's for dinner mode, which can be pretty stressful, especially when you're hungry. So a little bit of planning ahead for success helps cut down on that stress. And then when you have some of these recipes or some of these whole food ingredients already prepared on hand, it makes eating these nutrient dense foods that much easier. They're literally fast food because they're in your fridge and you just have to grab them out, warm them up or whatever, to put them on your plate. So that's another reason why folks tend to like that meal prepping mindset. Okay. So what are some of the ways that we can meal prep? The first one I think a lot of folks are familiar with is ingredient prepping. So this could be based off of recipes that you want to cook throughout the week, or it could just be you preparing different ingredients that you typically use a lot or you know that you enjoy. And what I would recommend focusing on if you're going to go take this approach is things that take a long time. So often this is our grains. So things like our brown rice, which can take about 45 minutes to cook, or, takes about 20 minutes if you're using the Instapot or a pressure cooker. So you could prep big batches of whatever grains that you want to have throughout the week. And you probably want to do a couple so you've got some variety. And then you would select whatever proteins you're going to have throughout the week. So are you going to do tofu? Are you going to do tempeh? Do you need to cook up a big pot of beans? And either you're cooking that pot of beans, you're marinating your tofu and your tempeh, maybe you're even cooking those off and putting those in their own separate container so you have some protein that's ready to go. And then chopping, veggies can be time consuming. You can also buy pre-cut or frozen to help cut down time. But if you have some veggies that you want to use in recipes throughout the week, maybe you spend some time on your meal prep day or in your meal prep hour preparing some produce that you can easily throw into whatever recipe you're making. And then finally, think about flavor. So it's great when we have, our protein, we have our veggie, we have our whole grain. So we have all three of those main pieces that we need on our plate for a balanced meal. But if it's not flavorful and it's boring, we're not going to enjoy eating it. So think about, are you getting some sauces to have on hand? Are you making a tahini sauce like we've made in previous classes? Or are you making a marinade to go on that tempeh or tofu? Keep that in mind as well. The next strategy is one folks are also probably familiar with, it's called batch cooking or volume cooking. And this is really just you pick a recipe or a couple different recipes, and maybe you're double or tripling it. So you've got a large volume of that particular food that then you can cool and freeze or cool and put a portion in your fridge and you can eat throughout the week. So this is a good strategy if repetition doesn't bother you and you really just want to pull something out of the fridge that's ready to go or the freezer that's ready to go. Whereas with that ingredients prepping strategy, that's really great for if you want to have you want to cut down on the prep work during the week, but you want to leave some room for creativity of being able to combine those different ingredients. Some things that you'll see here on the screen, all of these listed here lend themselves really well to volume cooking, and they freeze well in kind of individual portions or keep in the fridge well in individual portions. So you can make these large batches and then store them in smaller containers and portion sizes that you would consume them in. Finally, I think an often overlooked strategy for planning ahead with meals is to join forces with your friends. We're better together, and this is a great way where you can cook maybe one or two recipes and then swap portions of those recipes with friends. You can come together and have, a nice afternoon on a Sunday or a Saturday or whatever day works for you, where you're getting some social connection, which is another one of those important pillars of lifestyle medicine. You're having fun, you're cooking together, and you're cooking once but getting multiple types of recipes. So that's one way to do it. Or you could cook a large batch of something, and then instead of all being together in the same space, maybe you're just going around your neighborhood and you're swapping with your friends who have also made larger batches of things. So this is a lot less work. You get a lot of meal variety, and it brings some fun into your week. So again, there's no one size fits all. You can do a combination of these. It's really just about picking a strategy if you do want to meal prep and plan ahead that works best for you and your schedule. So some things that we want to keep in mind to help prepare us for success, whatever strategy we're going to use when we're meal prepping, is to make sure our pantry is well stocked with the whole food plant-based staples that we talked about in our January class. If you missed that class and you weren't here with us, you can go again to the class website or to our YouTube page and watch that recording to see what sort of things to stock your pantry with. There's also a really great list on the class website, and the class website will be shared in a follow-up email after class today. And then you also, just like your pantry tools, staples want to make sure that you've got your kitchen stocked with the appropriate tools. So again, January's class has a great list specifically for meal prepping. Some really important things would be storage containers like you see here, so that you can portion out your ingredients, store them in an organized fashion in your fridge. Sheet pans, particularly if you're going to be roasting off large batches of veggies or roasting some tofu. And then some tools that aren't essential but can be really helpful would be a pressure cooker. It makes cooking beans and rice a snap. I use mine almost every day. And then a food processor, especially if you're going to be doing large batches of shredding or making large batches of sauce or doing something like a hummus. An immersion blender could also work in some applications where a food processor, like for a sauce or something like that. And then, like I said, an immersion blender, that's also really great soup, stews, sauces. We'll be using an immersion blender tonight. So again, you could just have to pick your style and then make a plan for how you're going to execute that style. Think about the day of week that you're going to cook. Are you cooking to specific recipes? Maybe you need to print those recipes out. Put it in your calendar and make a date with yourself to make it happen. Some other considerations. So once you've made your plan and you're executing it, if you're cooking warm food that you want to throw in the freezer, make sure that you are cooling that down before you stick it in your freezer. Otherwise, it'll defrost all the food around it, and you might get into some food safety issues, or if not food safety issues, when the stuff, everything refreezes, it might crystallize and get a little freezer burned, which is just not delicious. And always make sure when you're storing things that you're labeling them. So I don't know how many things that I have made and put in a little baggie or a container in the fridge and then gone to pull it out and like, then what the heck is this? I thought I would remember what it was and I can't for the life of me remember when I pull it out a month later. So do yourself the favor, label it, put a date on it so that you can also practice what's called FIFO or first in, first out, so that you're using the oldest stuff first. So things are constantly rotating. And then keep in mind that that stuff that you stick in your freezer is going to have about a 2 to 3 month shelf life. So make sure you're rotating through it and using it within that period of time. All right. Now that we've gone through all of that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and let's get into the kitchen and do some cooking. So I am going to turn on my camera above my skillet here. Hopefully everybody's seeing that. I'm going to make sure that that is spotlighted. Perfect. Great. All right. So our very first recipe that we are going to make tonight is really easy. And this would be an example of a recipe that if you were going to do ingredient prep, say you wanted to get a protein going for the week, this would be something you could do. So we start with, this is an 8-ounce package of tempeh. This is what the tempeh package looks like. Okay, it comes kind of vacuum packed in this container. Tempeh is a fermented soy food. It's a really great source of plant-based protein and fiber. And Laura kindly cut it up into these strips. They're about the width of a pinky finger. Okay. And we're going to marinate it. Okay. So this again would be something that you could do a day or two ahead so that it's ready to go when you want to use it. So to marinate it, what we're going to do is add a couple tablespoons of a coconut amino. This is, if you haven't been with us before, this is a soy sauce alternative. So it's lower sodium and it has a slightly sweet flavor to it. We're going to add a teaspoon of maple syrup, a pinch of red pepper flakes, okay? And then we're going to juice some limes on here. And this is where your intuition is going to come in, okay? So one thing that's always good to do when you're cooking is to taste a little bit as you go and adjust your flavors. So this acid from the lime juice is kind of giving us some brightness, and it's going to help balance out some of the saltiness and the sweetness that's in that coconut aminos. So I'm going to start with the juice of probably 1 lime and then mix this around. And I'd want you to taste this and see, okay, is it still really salty? Does it need a little bit more brightness, or does it have enough of that acid and bite? And if it has enough, great, leave it as is. If you think it needs a little bit more, add a little bit more of that lime juice. Okay, so I'm gonna let this sit now. And then this would be ready to go in about 20 minutes, or you can let this sit in your fridge overnight and use it the next day. Okay, so really quick easy marinade. Our next recipe is a little bit more involved. We're gonna make a plant-based lasagna. So to start with that, we're actually gonna work on a lasagna pasta sauce. So we're gonna use some canned sauce, but I want to add some more veggies to that. So we're going to go ahead and get prepping of our veggies. The first veggie we're going to add is an onion. So to cut an onion, first I want to start by holding my knife properly. So at the blade of the knife towards the handle, I'm going to pinch it between my thumb and my first finger, okay, like this. And then I'm going to wrap my remaining 3 fingers around the handle like so, okay? This gives me more stability and protects my elbow from overuse. So, and my other hand, my non-knife holding hand is making a claw, okay, to keep my fingers away from the knife blade and hold my food stable. So I'm gonna slice down on the stem end of the knife, or of the onion, that papery part, and I'm gonna cut that away. I'm gonna set that part I just cut on the cutting board because it's a nice stable surface now. I'm gonna slice through the root tip in the middle of the onion down to the cutting board. And then I'm going to peel away these papery bits. And you might have to go down a layer or two in order to get the papery bits off, and that's totally fine. Okay, you can save that actually if you don't have a compost, but you want to make like a veggie stock, you can save the peel and the onion layer that you took off and in a bag in your freezer. And you can combine that with like the ends of peppers or the stems of mushrooms and make a really nice stock with it. All right, so to cut my onion, we're going to get this into a dice. That's our end goal. I'm going to use these lines on the onion, these kind of little grooves, as guidelines. I'm going to take the tip of my chef knife and I'm going to slice along those guidelines. And I'm not cutting all the way through to the root. I'm leaving about a pinky's width intact. Okay. And that's because that's going to help hold these slices together. And now I'm going to turn and go the opposite direction. And I've got a nice even dice. And my last little bit here, I can just kind of. So there we go. Not dice means to get into even kind of square pieces. So we're doing here. Just go around again real quick. And I'm going to turn my skillet on here. Oh, the onions are starting to get me. So I'm turning my skillet on. I'm going to let that warm for a second while we're finishing with our diced onion here. Perfect. And again, this does not have to be absolutely perfect. We're just trying to get approximately the same sized pieces because that helps with them cooking evenly. All right, I'm going to add a tablespoon of olive oil. Again, if you need to avoid oil for any reason, you could do a water saute here. I'm going to add in my onions. Notice I'm using not the non-blade side of my knife to scrape the onions in. Using the blade, scraping it across your cutting board dulls it. So I've got my skillet on a medium heat, and we're going to let that onion cook until it gets starts getting a little translucent. The next ingredient we're going to add are some mushrooms. So we've got about a cup of sliced mushrooms. I am sorry, the onion is getting me. So just bear with me as I blink at you. It'll be fine. It'll subside once they start cooking. So what I did, and I'm going to show you what I did, is I popped the stem off of these onions. I think that 1 cup ended up being about 4 mushrooms. Okay, again, doesn't have to be perfect. If you want to add more, great, add more. I popped the stem off. You can use this stem and slice it in half or in quarters and add it with your other mushrooms, Or if you are deciding to take your onions and put them in a stock bag, you could throw your mushroom stems in that stock bag as well. And then when you go to make your veggie stock, that'll add a nice umami flavor. Which umami is just kind of like a robust, deep flavor. All right, so I've got my mushroom cap. I'm gonna slice it in half, turn it the other direction, and then make slices, again, about the width of my pinky here. Okay, and then I've got those nice, even pieces. I'm gonna give my onions a stir because you can see they're starting to get a little glassy. Right, and we are going to add in, we've got one bell pepper. So this is a yellow bell pepper that was diced, beautifully diced by Laura. And we're gonna add in that 1 cup of mushrooms. And then I've got 1 cup of shredded carrot, or like about 1 medium shredded carrot. That's gonna go in here as well. So the carrots are gonna add a little bit of sweetness to our sauce without us having to add any added sugar. The mushrooms are adding some beta glucans, which is a really great fiber source. And then we're also getting a lot of colors here. You can see multiple colors, so it's helping us see the rainbow. All right, we're gonna let that cook for a second. While that is cooking, we are going to make our ricotta. So this is a plant-forward lasagna, and we are going to skip the dairy in this lasagna and make a tofu-based ricotta. So to do that, we are going to start with a package of extra firm tofu. This has been drained, so there's no liquid in this bowl or in this package. Typically, this is filled with water if you're not familiar with tofu. And what I like to do to drain it is to just make a couple slices over the sink and then turn this upside down, drain the liquid out. Oh, there's still a little bit in there, but that's okay. And then you have this ready to go. We don't need to press the tofu for this application. You might see that in some recipes, but in this application, we are making a soft cheese. And so the tofu having a little bit of water in it is not the end of the world because it'll help give us that softer consistency. I'm gonna give my veggies a stir here. Okay. So to this tofu, I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. I'm gonna add a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, a tablespoon of coconut aminos, a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and a half teaspoon of garlic powder. The garlic powder, if you wanted to use fresh garlic, it's a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder equals 1 clove of fresh garlic. Okay, so you can follow that substitution. And then we've got half a teaspoon of salt. I'm just gonna break this apart a little bit. Then what we're gonna do is give our veggies a stir. We're gonna use our handy dandy immersion blender. So this is the stick of the immersion blender. It's got a little blade here. This is the motor. They come apart for ease of cleaning. Usually they have an unlock button here, and this is how you turn it on. You have to hold the unlock button and this on button down at the same time. Okay, so we're going to use this to help us blend our ricotta. You can also do this in a food processor if you've got a food processor. I just wanted to show you how the immersion blender can work, because not everybody wants a food processor or has access to one. But these immersion blenders, they're about $30 depending on the attachments that you get with them. I think you can spend $45, $50 and get one that has a whisk and a little blender attachment. So I'm just I don't need this to be perfectly smooth. I just want it to be not in big chunks anymore. A little bit more. Okay. That looks pretty good to me. So that's the consistency I think we're going for. So I'm going to detach this so I can use our immersion blender for other things. I just want to stir in some of those flavorings. They didn't evenly get mixed. I'm just going to use this spatula to stir those around. Okay, so that's our ricotta. It's ricotta cheese consistency. That's exactly what you're going for. Okay, so we're going to set that aside for the moment. Thank you. I'm going to check in here on our, all right, things are getting close. All right, our last veg, we've got a couple cups of chopped spinach that are going in. And I'm just going to cook that for a second here until it gets a little wilty. Then we are going to add, we've got 2 jars, excuse me, of a pasta sauce. This brand is not the only brand of pasta sauce that you need to use. It just happens to be what I picked up at the grocery store before this class. The most important things when you're shopping for pasta sauce that you're looking for are 100% olive oil and no added sugar or artificial sweeteners. So a lot of pasta sauces will say no added sugar, but then they'll use some sort of artificial sweetener. So like you would do for any food that you pick up off the shelf, go to your ingredients list, okay? So your nutrition facts label is here, your ingredients list is here. Look for the extra virgin olive oil, which we see here, and scan for any signs of added sugar. I don't see any there. You can also go to your nutrition facts label where under the carbohydrates, where it says added sugar right there. And there's 0 grams of added sugar. So this looks like a great option. Okay. So this is the kind of pasta sauce that we want to use. We are going to throw that 2 jars. So these are 24-ounce jars. So if you shop at a Costco or a big box store and they have larger sauce containers, keep that in mind. So about 48 ounces of sauce total is what we're going for here. Okay. So we're going to add both of these in here. And you don't need to worry about getting the sauce warm necessarily, because again, where this is for a lasagna and the lasagna is going to go into the oven. This is just to get everything mixed together because this is all going to be on the same layer. Okay, so I'm just going to stir this together. I'm going to turn off my heat, actually. And you can leave it just like this. It's beautiful as it is. If you're someone who likes smoother textures or your family enjoys smoother textures, this would be another opportunity to use that immersion blender or to pour this into your food processor or blender, and then you can puree it to make it smooth. Alternatively, you can also do that with the veggies before you cook them. I just prefer to do it this way. This is the way that I enjoy it. And I'm going to leave them whole because I'm someone, I enjoy the different textures. But again, if that's not you, use your immersion blender. The other beautiful thing about this pasta sauce, tomatoes are a really rich source of lycopene, which is a wonderful antioxidant that's been shown to have protective effects against certain types of cancer. We actually absorb more of that lycopene from cooked tomato products like this tomato sauce here. All right, so now we've got our layers. We are going to start assembling our lasagna. So first things first, we want to put about a cup of our pasta sauce on the bottom. So a hearty cup of pasta sauce along the bottom of our baking pan here. Okay, if you're going to freeze this, you could also use those foil pans. Those work really well for freezing. And you can freeze this pasta or this lasagna cooked or uncooked. So we're just going to add a layer of noodles. typically what I would want for you is whole grain noodles here, but nowhere in Ypsilanti apparently has whole grain lasagna noodles today. So we are using the normal enriched lasagna noodles. And the reason why we recommend using the whole grain pasta noodles, they've got more fiber in them, and it's getting more fiber in you. And the fiber keeps you full. It helps regulate your blood sugar. In this case, if I were at home and I didn't have the whole wheat pasta noodles, to get more fiber in here, what I might do is add maybe some lentils, some cooked lentils to this, and then I'm upping the fiber power of this, and I'm kind of counteracting the blood sugar raising effects of the more processed lasagna noodles. Okay. So just a tip, if you ever find yourself in the situation like I am tonight, just throw some lentils in there and their fiber will do the trick. Okay, so we've got our layer of lasagna noodles down. I'm gonna add another layer of sauce. Okay. And again, it does not have to be perfect. You're just kind of trying to get everything covered here. Right, and then I'm gonna add some of our ricotta or tofu. So the ricotta you're dividing about into fifths. Okay, so I want to use about a fifth of it. I think that's about how it's gonna work out. So I'm just kind of trying to smooth this around here. Looks pretty even. And then another layer of noodles. Right, and then we just keep repeating this process. Actually, I like to kind of stagger. So my layer of noodles before this, I did a small piece that I broke on that side. And so I'm going to kind of stagger that and do the whole noodles here, and I'll do the broken piece on this side. That way, when you bite into that piece, you're less likely to have it all fall apart on you. All right, we'll do one more layer, and then I think you get the gist. So you're just continuing this process until all of your lasagna noodles are gone. And that very final layer, you're just gonna put a layer of remaining sauce. And then if you have any ricotta left over, you just do a couple dollops of that on the top, more for decorative appeal. Okay, so one more layer of our ricotta. Then we will call this good. So then to cook this, what you're going to do is pop it into, I think it was let me double check because I don't want to lie to you. 350-degree oven, and you are going to bake it for 35 minutes. If you froze this and you're cooking it from frozen, it's going to take an hour, hour and a half. Okay, so it's a longer process when you're cooking it from frozen. You can also cook this, let it cool, cut it into individual pieces, and then freeze it that way. All up to you and kind of how you want to plan your time and what you think you'll want to do in those moments of time crunch. Okay, so that's our lasagna. Reset our kitchen a little bit here, so bear with me 1 second. No, I don't need those. All right, our next recipe is a breakfast or a dessert option. You can look at it a couple different ways. So we're going to make a overnight oats bake. Yeah, not overnight oats, excuse me. It's a baked oatmeal. We make overnight oats in our other classes. This baked oatmeal is one of my favorite things to make ahead because, like I said, it's a really delicious fast breakfast option, or a tasty if you just need something a little sweet. So we start with 2 cups of berries that have been defrosted. So this is just a frozen berry mixture. And we put that into a 9x9 pan on the bottom. Okay, and just kind of spread it evenly around. We're going to set that aside for the moment, and we're going to work on our remaining ingredients. So we've got our dry ingredients. We've got 2 cups of rolled oats. So these rolled oats are a whole grain full of that soluble fiber that helps keep us full and with blood sugar and blood pressure and cholesterol. And then we've got a 1/2 cup of hemp hearts, great source of plant-based protein and those anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids. We've got a couple teaspoons of cinnamon, which is a nice warming spice that kind of enhances our perception of sweetness without us having to add a bunch of added sugar. We've got a teaspoon of baking powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So those are our dry ingredients. We're gonna whisk those together. And then what we're going to do is put those dry ingredients on top of our berries. Okay. And I like to kind of use this scoop because the hemp hearts are small and they fall to the bottom. And so I like to scoop and spread this way just so I'm getting the hemp heart spread evenly throughout the dish and not just all on the top or in one part. Also helps with the cinnamon too, so you don't get one bite that's just pure cinnamon and tastes like you're eating a Red Hot instead of the delicious baked oatmeal. All right, so we're just going to evenly spread this around. If you don't have hemp hearts, you can't find them, or you want to use something different, walnuts work great here. So you could, or pecans, any of those kind of nuts would be a great addition. You can also vary the fruit in here, so it doesn't have to be berries. That's just is what we're using tonight, because they're chock full of a lot of really wonderful antioxidants that are really helpful for our brain cognitive function. But you could use, I'm going to reuse this. You can use like peaches would be really lovely here, or a diced apple, something, any of your stone fruits would work really well. Strawberry, which is a berry, but there's not in this mixture, also really great. All right, now we are on to our wet ingredients. So we've got 1 3/4 cup of milk. This is an oat milk that was unsweetened. Always want to look for unsweetened. We've got 1/3 cup of maple syrup, a couple teaspoons of vanilla, and then we have a flax egg. So this is 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed with 5 tablespoons of water that has been let to sit and kind of form this viscous kind of gel. So it mimics an egg and it's helping bind. Flaxseed also great source of plant-based omega-3, so those anti-inflammatory fats, and compounds called lignans, which are phytoestrogens, which are cardioprotective and protective against different types of cancer. So we're just going to mix that all together, basically just trying to break up that flax egg. Okay. And then we are going to pour this atop our dry ingredients, try to evenly spread it around. And I realize I'm pouring into the camera, sorry. So there we go. Just kind of pour this throughout until everything gets covered. I use my spatula to make sure all of my oats get damp. All right, and then I'm going to stick this in a 350-degree oven for 40 to 50 minutes. If the fruit is not defrosted and you're using frozen fruit, it's going to take a little bit longer, so more 45 to 50 minutes. If your fruit's defrosted or room temperature, it's going to be closer to that 40 minutes. Okay, so we bake it, and then it comes out of the oven looking just like this. Nice and beautiful, and it's again ready for a dessert or a delicious breakfast option. You can top it with like a plant-based yogurt, some more of those flax seeds or hemp seeds, or some fresh chopped fruit. Right. We're on to our very last recipe, and then we'll do that survey together and a couple announcements. Our last recipe, this is one that I love making at home. I do this often. It's from the Oh She Glows cookbook. It's a power bowl, a lentil power bowl. So we have already cooked off, this is 1 cup of dry green lentils that were cooked. You can cook them 1 cup of lentils to 2 cups of water. You simmer them for about 15 to 20 minutes until they are soft and most of the water is absorbed. And then we've also got 1 cup of quinoa. The recipe on the website calls for millet, but you can substitute any whole grain if you can't find millet in your grocery store. We happen to have a lot of quinoa, so that's what I'm using tonight. 1 cup, again, with 2 cups of water. Cook for about 15 minutes. All right. So first things first, we want to saute our onion and get that going. So we've got I'm gonna use about 1 tablespoon of some olive oil in here. We already practiced cutting an onion together, so I figured you didn't need to see me do that again. But we are gonna add that onion to our skillet. And while that is cooking, we are going to work on our pepper. So this, we're doing 1 medium bell pepper. We're using an orange bell pepper because we're wanting to vary our colors in this dish. To get this to a diced form, I like to cut it by setting it on its long side on the cutting board and then slicing off the top, okay, through the stem. I'm going to get rid of this stem in my compost pile. We're going to keep this. We'll dice it up. And then I like to turn it again on its other side and slice off the bumpy bottom. That gives me a nice stable surface to stand my pepper up on. And then I can also see where the pith is and where the core that has the seeds in it is. And then I like to make square cuts around my pepper, trying to remove that pith and keep the seeds intact so I don't get the seeds all over my cutting board. Then I can stack up those squared off pieces of pepper and make thin slices about the width of my finger. I can turn the pile of slices and then make a cut, evenly spaced cuts the opposite direction. And now I've got my diced pepper pieces, okay? So I'll repeat that process with our other slices here. And remember, I'm always trying to keep my non-knife hand in that claw to keep my fingertips away from being cut, keep them nice and safe. All right, slice up this piece here. So something to think about when you're using a knife, you might notice that I'm trying to keep the tip of my chef's knife on the cutting board, and I'm trying to slice with this part right here. So this part of your chef knife is kind of the sweet spot, and where you want to try to be slicing. Not up here, not necessarily at the tip, but you want to try to be cutting your produce within this section here. All right, I'm going to give our onions a little stir here, turn up the heat just a titch, and finish this bust. If you don't want to mess around with cutting these, that veggie stock bag that I mentioned, you can put those rounded pieces right in there. All right, so into the skillet our pepper goes. Let that cook and do its thing. We've also got 1 cup of cherry tomatoes that have been cut in half. Those are going in there. And 2 cloves of garlic that were minced. Okay. Fun thing with garlic, if you chop it and then you mince it and then let it sit for about 10 minutes, it actually increases the formation of a compound called allicin. It's a very powerful antioxidant So as it can protect ourselves from damage, that's what antioxidants do. So whenever you're cooking with fresh garlic, mince and then set it aside for a few minutes before you throw it on the heat. All right, while that is going, we are going to make our dressing. Okay, so we're going to let these veggies cook for a few minutes and then make our dressing. Our dressing consists of half a cup of lemon juice, a quarter cup of tahini. Tahini is that ground sesame paste that we've used it in a couple recipes before. But if you're unfamiliar with it, it's just like peanut butter. So like peanut butter is just ground peanut. Tahini is just ground sesame seeds. And sesame seeds are high in calcium. So tahini is a good plant-based calcium source. Tahini is a little bit bitter to most people's palates. So whenever we're working with it, I like to add a source of acid and often a source of sweet. Our veggies are providing that sweetness for this dish to help kind of balance out that bitterness. You can find the tahini in the Kroger here in Ypsilanti. It's with the peanut butter. In most grocery stores, it's in like a world food section, maybe with other Middle Eastern foods. It's used a lot in Middle Eastern cooking. All right, we're going to give our veggies a stir. I don't want my garlic to burn because then it gets a little bitter. So I just turned down my heat to more of a medium low. But we did get some nice caramelization on the tomato. So that's going to be lovely. I also got a quarter cup of nutritional yeast. This is adding like a cheesy flavor to this. Nutritional yeast is also a good plant-based source of vitamin B12. It's often fortified with that. I have got a quarter teaspoon of garlic powder. Again, you could use a clove of garlic here, minced if you wanted to. Half teaspoon of salt and a couple tablespoons of olive oil. I'm going to use our handy dandy immersion blender again. And we're just going to give this a nice little, and I'm making a mess, but that's okay. All right, well, maybe that's a little bit more of a mess than I want to make. So these immersion blenders also come with kind of cups that you can mix everything in. If you're doing a smaller volume of a sauce, those cups come in really handy to prevent some of that splattering that you just saw that was happening. But actually, we got our job done, so that's okay. All right, so I'm just all I wanted to do was get all those things mixed together. So now I'm going to give these veggies a quick stir. I'm going to add in our final veggie, which is a couple cups of chopped spinach. You could also use frozen spinach or frozen kale here. You just would want to add it a little bit earlier. And you could use fresh kale, baby kale, if you wanted. This recipe is really nice because it's really versatile. It's kind of the kitchen sink recipe. Whatever extra veggies, I'll put shredded carrot in here. I've thrown sliced mushrooms in here, chopped up green beans, or it's garlic scape season, so you could throw garlic scapes chopped up in here. It's really, really versatile. All right. So now we're going to add in our lentils. Again, this was 1 cup of green or brown lentils that was cooked. And then this is 1 cup of dry quinoa. Quinoa expands in volume, so a lot more than 1 cup here. There's probably about 3 or 4 cups of that quinoa. Going to give that a stir just until everything is mixed together. All I'm going for here. I want that quinoa. The quinoa kind of plumps up after it sits for a second, so I just want to break up those. So this dish, you're getting a lot of fiber and protein from the lentils, and quinoa is actually, it's a whole grain, but it actually also has a good amount of protein, about 9 grams per cup. So you're getting more plant power protein from the quinoa as well. This is a nice dish for not having a lot of dirty dishes afterwards too. Everything goes into this one pot. All right, we're adding our sauce. All right, give that a stir. And I'm going to turn off our heat because I don't need this sauce to be cooked necessarily. I just am looking to coat everything evenly with that tahini sauce. That tahini sauce is a really nice, with or without the nutritional yeast, is a really versatile sauce for dressings or grain bowls. You can thin it out and make a really lovely salad dressing, or keep it kind of thick like this and top a grain bowl. You don't have to use it necessarily in this application. You could cut down on the oil and the lemon juice a little bit, and it gets really thick and can be a nice dip or spread in place of mayo on a sandwich. All right, so that's pretty good. The last and final ingredient, we've just got, I think we're going for about a half a cup of parsley mince to go on top. So the parsley, I can use the stems and the leaves. I'm just going to roll it up into this nice little bunch. Make some little cuts here. Okay, I'm going to gather that bunch together, and I'm going to slice the opposite direction. This adds a really nice bright flavor. This is a source of a phytonutrient called apigenin 2, which is another one of those plant-powered compounds that protects our cells from damage. So we're just going to sprinkle that on top for a nice garnish. When you're eating this with friends, just make sure they tell you if you got parsley stuck in your teeth. Awesome. All right, we made it. We got through every recipe, and I'm going to share my slides again real quick. So if you have a smartphone, I'll also send the link to this in an email. So if you aren't able to access this right now, look for that link and you can fill out the survey with that. If you have a smartphone, just open up your photo app, hold it up to this QR code, and it'll take you to an online survey. It takes about 10 minutes to complete. Filling this out really does help us make sure that, first and foremost, these classes are working for you and it's the content that you're looking for. There's nothing that we're missing that would be valuable for you and your education around plant-based cooking. And it does help give us feedback that we can use to help advocate for continuing to offer these free classes to the community. So it's really, really helpful if you would take that 10 minutes just to fill out that survey. And again, if you had any issues with it, you can email lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org, and someone will get in contact and help you troubleshoot that. The link will also be sent in the email following class. I also wanted to mention that our team teaches a Foundations of Lifestyle Medicine class series where we go through each of the pillars of lifestyle medicine over the course of 6 weeks. So if you're excited about this whole food, plant-forward way of cooking, but you also want to learn more about the other pillars, this would be a really great class to do it. We do some science, so you get kind of the why behind all the pillars, and then we always talk about practical applications of how you can apply that science into everyday habits in your own life. This program is not free like these classes that you're joining us in tonight. We do bill insurance, so the code that we use is on the screen. If you're interested, verify that you have coverage of that. And if you would like to register or you want more information, email that lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org and we'll get you some additional information.
Susan said the survey says it's closed.
Oh, Susan, I appreciate that feedback on the survey. I'm sorry that it's giving that response. It shouldn't be. So let me double check that, and I will email it out to everybody. If you could just please look for that link in your email and make sure to fill it out, that would be great. Thank you so much. And then I just wanted to make sure everyone still had access to the class website. I'll also include that in the follow-up email. But again, if you have your phone open, you want to scan that QR code, it should take you to our class website. The recipes from this class and the recording will be posted within 1 week of class. So look for it by this time next week, right? With that, I know we're slightly over. I will say good night and thank you for joining us for another Cooking with Plants series. I always have fun in these classes and hope you do too. And I look forward to seeing you next month when we talk about unique vegetables with our friends from the farm. Take good care.